I thought I knew the woman I was about to marry. 3 months before our wedding, Natalie and I found our dream house, a beautiful 3-bedroom Craftsman in Capitol Hill. I had saved $70,000 for the down payment. Everything felt perfect until she asked for one small thing: put the house solely under her name. At first, it seemed like a reasonable request, something we could work through. But that single demand would unravel everything I thought I knew about the woman I loved, revealing a side of her that made me question if I had ever really known her at all. Before I tell you how a simple real estate decision exposed everything, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets darker than you would expect. Trust me, what started as a disagreement about paperwork turned into discovering the most calculated betrayal I could have imagined. I am Sebastian, 30 years old, and I work as a software engineer at a tech company here in Seattle. I make around $130,000 a year, which is decent for this city. I have always been careful with money, not cheap, just practical. Growing up in a middle-class family taught me the value of hard work and saving. My parents were not wealthy, but they were smart with their finances, and they raised me to be the same way. Over the past 5 years, I had been saving aggressively, putting away money every month with a clear goal in mind: buying a home. By the time I turned 30, I had managed to save $70,000 specifically for a down payment. It was not easy. Seattle is expensive, and while my salary was good, rent alone took a huge chunk. I skipped vacations, drove an older car, and lived below my means. But I was proud of what I had accomplished. That money represented discipline, sacrifice, and a future I was building for myself. 2 years ago, I met Natalie at a charity event downtown. She was 28, worked in marketing, and had this energy about her that drew people in. She was confident, funny, and seemed to share the same values I did. We talked for hours that first night about everything from career goals to favorite hiking trails. She told me she admired people who worked hard and planned ahead. I remember thinking I had finally met someone who got it, someone who understood that building a life together meant being smart about finances and decisions. We dated for a year before I proposed. During that time, everything felt right. She was supportive of my career, we had similar friend groups, and our families got along well enough. There were small moments when I noticed she could be particular about getting her way, like choosing restaurants or planning weekends. But I chalked it up to her having strong opinions. I actually found it attractive at first. She knew what she wanted, and I respected that. After we got engaged, we started talking seriously about buying a house. Natalie was excited about the idea, maybe even more excited than I was. She spent hours on real estate websites, creating folders of listings and planning what our future home would look like. We set a budget of around $350,000. With my $70,000 down and a mortgage for the rest, it was doable. The plan was to close on a house a few months before the wedding, move in together, and start our married life in a place that was truly ours. For 2 months, we looked at houses every weekend. Natalie was incredibly picky, which I understood. This was a big decision, but there were multiple houses I really liked that she dismissed immediately. Too small, wrong neighborhood, outdated kitchen. I started to feel like my opinion did not carry much weight, but I told myself she just had higher standards. She was in marketing, after all. She had an eye for aesthetics. Then we found it. A gorgeous 3-bedroom Craftsman-style house in Capitol Hill. The moment we walked in, I knew it was special. Hardwood floors throughout, an updated kitchen with stainless steel appliances, and a small backyard, perfect for summer barbecues. The listing price was $345,000, right within our budget. Natalie loved it too. For the first time in weeks, we were completely aligned. We put in an offer that same day, and by the evening the sellers had accepted. I was on cloud 9. We celebrated with champagne that night, calling our parents and friends to share the news. Everything was falling into place. The wedding was planned for late June. The house would close in April, and we would have 2 months to settle in before becoming husband and wife. Life felt like it was finally aligning the way I had always hoped. But that night, after the excitement settled, we sat down to go over the financial details. I pulled out my laptop and started creating a spreadsheet: down payment, monthly mortgage, property taxes, insurance. I was in my element, organizing and planning. I said casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, that we should make sure both our names were on the deed. Joint ownership. Equal partnership. That is what marriage meant to me. Natalie went quiet. Not just quiet, but still. She stared at her phone, scrolling through nothing, not really looking at the screen. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was just tired. But something felt off. The energy in the room had shifted. I suggested we table the conversation until the weekend, when we were both fresher. She agreed quickly, almost too quickly, and went to bed without saying much else. I sat there alone, staring at my spreadsheet, wondering why something that should have been simple suddenly felt complicated. That weekend, I thought we would have a casual conversation over coffee. Instead, Natalie showed up with printed documents, charts, and what looked like a full presentation. She had clearly been preparing for this. She sat me down at the dining table and started going through her points like she was pitching to a client. Her main argument was that putting the house solely in her name would protect her if things did not work out between us. She said it calmly, as if it were a perfectly reasonable concern. I was stunned. Protect her? From what? From me. I was the one putting down $70,000. I would be the one carrying the majority of the mortgage payments given our income difference. I tried to stay calm and asked her to explain further. She said her credit score was better than mine, which would help with the mortgage rate. That was not true. I had checked my credit score recently, and it was actually higher than hers. When I pointed this out, she waved it off and moved to her next point. She claimed her family had a tradition of passing property through the women in the family. This was the first I was hearing of it. In 2 years together, she had never mentioned any such tradition. I asked her to clarify, and she became vague, saying it was just something her mother and grandmother had done. Then came the line that really got to me: "If you really loved me, you would understand." That phrase hit me like a punch. It was not a request anymore. It was a test. She was measuring my love by my willingness to hand over $70,000 and put a $345,000 house entirely in her name, while contributing nothing to the down payment herself. I took a deep breath and tried to explain my perspective. This was supposed to be a partnership. Marriage meant building something together, sharing responsibilities and assets equally. If we were going to be husband and wife, why would not the house be in both our names? Her response shocked me. She became defensive immediately, her tone sharp. She asked if I did not trust her. She accused me of trying to control her. She said I was being selfish and making this about money when it should be about love. Every time I tried to explain that it was about fairness, not trust, she twisted my words. The conversation went in circles, and by the end I felt exhausted and confused. How had a simple discussion about joint ownership turned into me being painted as the villain? A few days later, Natalie invited me to dinner at her mother's house. She said her mom wanted to celebrate the house purchase. I should have known something was up. When I arrived, not only was her mother Patricia there, but also her older sister Amanda. The dinner felt staged from the moment I walked in. We barely got through appetizers before Patricia brought up the house situation. She said she had heard there was some disagreement about the deed. I tried to explain my position, calmly emphasizing that I believed in equal ownership for equal partnership. Before I could finish, Amanda jumped in. She started talking about how smart women protect themselves, how men leave all the time, how I was being selfish for not wanting to give Natalie security. Patricia nodded along, adding stories about men she knew who had abandoned their families and left women with nothing. I felt ambushed. This was not a dinner. It was an intervention. Natalie sat there saying nothing, letting her mother and sister attack me. I looked at her, hoping she would defend me, or at least ask them to let me speak. Instead, she looked at me with this expression that said, "See, even my family thinks you are wrong." I realized in that moment that she had orchestrated this entire thing. She had brought me here to be ganged up on, hoping the pressure would make me cave. I excused myself early, claiming I had work to finish. The truth was I needed space to think. As I drove home, my hands were shaking, not from anger but from the realization that the woman I was about to marry had just allowed her family to berate me instead of standing by my side. That night I could not sleep. I kept replaying the dinner in my head, seeing Natalie's face, her silence, her complicity. The next week was relentless. Natalie ramped up her tactics. Every morning I woke up to texts about the house deadline, how we were going to lose it because of my stubbornness. She sent me articles about couples who had lost their dream homes due to indecision. She called me during work, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, saying I was ruining everything we had planned. Our wedding planner even called me saying Natalie had mentioned we might need to postpone the deposit because of some unresolved issues. The guilt trip was constant and coming from every angle. Then her friends started texting me. People I barely knew were messaging me, saying things like, "Just sign the papers, what is the big deal?" Or "Natalie is crying every night because of this." It felt coordinated, like a pressure campaign designed to break me down. I started to wonder if I was being unreasonable. Maybe I was making too big a deal out of this. Maybe love meant sometimes sacrificing your position for the other person's peace of mind. But then I called Marcus, my best friend since college. I told him everything. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before he said, "Dude, this is insane." He asked me to imagine if the situation were reversed, if I were demanding Natalie put down $70,000 for a house solely in my name. Would anyone think that was reasonable? Would her family support that? The answer was obvious. He told me these were red flags I could not ignore. That conversation with Marcus shifted something in me. I started looking back at our relationship with clearer eyes. I remembered times when Natalie had convinced me to spend money on things I was not comfortable with, like an expensive vacation or designer furniture for her apartment. I thought about how decisions always seemed to go her way, how she would use tears or anger to get what she wanted. I realized Marcus was right. This was not about the house. This was about control. I decided to do some research. I called David, a friend from my gym who worked in real estate law. I explained the situation without mentioning names and asked for his professional opinion. His response was blunt. He said if I put the house solely in her name, I would have zero legal claim to it, even if we got married. If we broke up or divorced, I would lose my entire down payment and have no equity in a property I had largely paid for. He called it financial suicide and asked why anyone would agree to that arrangement. I did not have a good answer. Armed with this information, I made my decision. I would not sign anything unless both our names were on the deed. This was not about trust or love. This was about basic fairness and self-respect. If Natalie could not understand that, then maybe we had bigger problems than a house. I asked Natalie to sit down with me for a serious conversation. No family, no friends, just the two of us. I told her my decision clearly. I was willing to buy the house, excited to buy the house, but only if both our names were on the deed. I explained that this was about partnership and equality, the foundation of what I thought marriage should be. I was calm, rational, and firm. Her reaction was explosive. She started screaming, asking how I could do this to her, to us. Tears poured down her face, but they felt performative, like she was following a script. She said I was ruining everything, that I was selfish and controlling. She brought up the wedding, saying she could not believe she was marrying someone who cared more about money than her happiness. I sat there absorbing her words, and for the first time, I saw through the performance. This was manipulation, pure and simple. I told her that if she could not respect this very reasonable boundary, maybe we needed to reconsider things. The moment those words left my mouth, she stopped crying. Her face changed. The sadness was gone, replaced by something cold. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and said I would regret this. Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. That night my phone exploded with angry texts from her, paragraphs about how I had betrayed her, how I was throwing away our future, how her family had been right to worry about me. By morning, she sent an ultimatum sign. The papers by Friday or the wedding was off. The audacity of it stunned me. She was threatening to call off our wedding because I would not financially endanger myself for her benefit. Something told me to dig deeper. Natalie and I shared a family iCloud account, something we had set up months ago to share photos and calendars. I had never looked through her messages before. I trusted her, but that trust was crumbling, and I needed to know if my instincts were right. What I found destroyed me. There was a text thread between Natalie and Amanda that went back weeks. I read messages about their plan, how once the house was in Natalie's name, she could do whatever she wanted with it. Amanda had written, "If it does not work out, at least you will have the house." Natalie had responded with a laughing emoji and said, "Sebastian will not see it coming." There were jokes about how easy I was to manipulate, how I was so focused on doing the right thing that I could not see what was happening. One message from Amanda particularly stood out. "You will be set, even if you leave him." Natalie had replied exactly, "That is the whole point." I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. This was not a misunderstanding or a difference in values. This was calculated. She had been planning to trap me financially from the beginning. The house was never about building a life together. It was about securing her future, at my expense, with an exit strategy already in place. I called Marcus immediately. My voice was shaking as I read him the messages. He was silent for a long moment before he said he needed to tell me something. He had heard rumors from mutual friends that Natalie had done something similar with an ex-boyfriend a few years ago. She had convinced him to buy expensive things, made promises about their future, and then left him once she had gotten what she wanted. Marcus had not mentioned it before because he thought it was just gossip, but now it all made sense. This was a pattern. I felt like an idiot. How had I not seen this? I started reviewing our entire relationship through this new lens. The expensive vacation she had convinced me to book all on my credit card that we supposedly would pay off together, but I had ended up covering most of it. The designer couch she just had to have for her apartment, which I had split with her, even though I would never live there. The way she had slowly isolated me from certain friends, claiming they were bad influences, or did not understand our relationship, the control over small things, what I wore, how I styled my hair, what I posted on social media. It had all been so gradual that I had not noticed the pattern. This was not love. This had never been love. It was manipulation, and I had been the perfect target. Someone who worked hard, saved money, and wanted to do the right thing. Someone who could be guilted into sacrifice because I believed that is what love required. I knew what I had to do. I called a lawyer about the wedding contracts and vendors. I reviewed what deposits we had put down and what the financial damage would be from calling everything off. It was going to cost me around $10,000 in lost deposits. It hurt, but it was nothing compared to what I would lose if I went through with marrying this woman. Better to lose $10,000 now than 70,000 plus years of my life, to someone who saw me as a mark instead of a partner. I called my parents and told them everything. They were shocked, but supportive. My mom admitted she had sensed something was off about Natalie, but had not wanted to interfere. My dad said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Their support meant everything. Friday morning came the deadline Natalie had set for me to sign the papers. Instead of meeting her at the real estate office like she expected, I texted and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. She showed up looking confident, probably thinking I had caved and was ready to apologize. She sat down across from me, with a slight smile, waiting for me to speak. I kept my voice calm and steady. I told her I was calling off the wedding. Her smile disappeared. She started to ask why, but I cut her off. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots of her text conversation with Amanda. I watched the color drain from her face. For a moment, she just stared at the screen and then at me. Her first reaction was to get defensive. She asked how I dared go through her phone trying to make this about privacy instead of betrayal. I told her we shared an iCloud account, but that was beside the point. The point was, I knew exactly what she had been planning. She tried to backtrack, saying those texts meant nothing, that Amanda and she were just joking around. I did not respond to the lies. I simply took the engagement ring off the table where I had placed it and slid it toward her. I told her I deserved better than this, better than someone who would manipulate and scheme instead of building something real. I said we were done completely, and finally. She started crying, real tears this time mixed with panic. She reached for my hand, begging me to reconsider, saying we could work through this. But I was already standing up. I had nothing left to say to her. I walked out of that coffee shop and did not look back. The aftermath was messy. Natalie's family erupted. Patricia called me multiple times, leaving voicemails filled with threats and accusations. Amanda sent me harassing texts, calling me every name in the book. Natalie took to social media, painting herself as the victim. She posted vague messages about being abandoned, weeks before her wedding, about trusting the wrong person, about heartbreak and betrayal. Her friends rallied around her, and some of them attacked me online, calling me cruel and cowardly. I did not engage. I did not defend myself publicly or try to tell my side of the story. I simply posted one statement on my own social media: the wedding has been called off due to irreconcilable differences. I wish her well and am moving forward. That was it. I did not owe anyone an explanation, and I was not going to get dragged into a public battle. My real friends, the ones who mattered, rallied around me. Marcus helped me cancel vendors and deal with logistics. My parents helped me navigate the financial mess. I lost around $10,000 in deposits for the venue, catering, and other wedding expenses. It stung, but every dollar lost was worth the future I had saved myself from. The first few months after calling off the wedding were tough. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had overreacted or thrown away something that could have been fixed. But every time those thoughts crept in, I would remember those text messages, the cold calculation in her words, and I knew I had made the right choice. I started going to therapy to process everything. My therapist helped me understand the manipulation tactics Natalie had used and why I had been vulnerable to them. I learned about gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and financial abuse. I realized how close I had come to trapping myself in a marriage that would have drained me emotionally and financially. Therapy gave me tools to recognize red flags and trust my instincts in the future. I reconnected with friends Natalie had slowly distanced me from. I had not even realized how isolated I had become until I started reaching out again. We went hiking, grabbed beers, played basketball on weekends. It felt like reclaiming parts of myself that had been buried. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned, like rock climbing and photography. I remembered what it felt like to do things purely because they brought me joy, not because someone else approved. 6 months after everything fell apart, I got a promotion at work. My focus and productivity had actually improved once I was not constantly stressed about wedding planning and relationship drama. I moved into a new apartment, one that was entirely mine. My name on the lease, my furniture, my rules. The freedom felt incredible. I could come home and just breathe without walking on eggshells or worrying about someone's mood. I learned some hard lessons through this experience. I learned that red flags should never be ignored. No matter how much you want to believe, they are nothing. I learned that financial boundaries are not about being unromantic or untrusting. They are about self-respect and protecting yourself from people who would take advantage. I learned that real love does not demand blind trust or sacrifices that leave you vulnerable. Real love is built on mutual respect, equality, and partnership. I also learned that sometimes the best investment is not the one you make, but the one you walk away from. That house would have been the most expensive prison I ever bought myself. I would have been legally tied to someone who saw me as a resource instead of a partner. Walking away cost me $10,000 and some emotional pain, but staying would have cost me so much more. A year later, I heard through mutual friends that Natalie was engaged again. Some poor guy who probably had no idea what he was getting into. I felt bad for him, but it was not my place to interfere. People have to learn their own lessons. I just hoped he was smarter than I had been. or at least that he would see the signs before it was too late. As for me, I am doing better than I have in years. I eventually bought a small condo, just my name on the deed, and it feels perfect. I have been dating casually, taking my time and not rushing into anything. I know what I am looking for now, and I know what I will not tolerate. The right person will not demand that I sacrifice my values or my financial security. The right person will want to build something together equally and honestly. Looking back, that moment when Natalie demanded the house be solely in her name was a gift, even though it did not feel like it at the time. It forced me to see the truth about who she was and what our relationship really meant to her. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best decisions. Sometimes saying no saves your entire life. So let me ask you, have you ever had a moment where someone demanded something that just felt wrong, even if you could not explain why? At first, have you ever walked away from something everyone else thought you should accept? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about life, relationships, and standing up for yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be facing their own tough decision right now. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there trust their gut and choose themselves even when it is hard. Remember, the right choice is not always the easy one, but it is always worth it in the end. Take care of yourselves out there, and never let anyone convince you that love means losing yourself.